Hello, dear blockchain community, and welcome at RBI Blockchain Night 2022 under the motto tokenization in the financial sector. My name is Daniel Vicevic, and it is my big pleasure to moderate this evening. Crypto winter, NFT hype, Ethereum merge. The year 2020 was full of blockchain topics, and many things have been happening in the financial sector as well. Therefore, we have a lot of experts today to discuss the relevance and use cases of blockchain in the financial sector. But before we do, we want to know a little bit more about you guys. Which city are you from? So welcome to Hopin Digital Tool. And on your right side, you have the chat, and we have integrated Slido there where we want to interact with you. We have a moderated Q&A there. But now for the beginning, we want to ask you, which city are you from? We have more than 500 applicants for this event, so I'm very, very curious where you guys are from. And let me see. I'll welcome my guest in studio right now and have them comment that as well. Vienna is the first one to come. Let us know. Zagreb, Dortmund, Bern in Switzerland, Bratislava, Slovenia, excellent, Maribor, Budapest, Athens. We have Kitzbühel, we have Frankfurt, we have, what else do we have? Belgrade. We have Germany, we have Austria, obviously cities. We need cities. We have more cities than countries, so we need more cities here. Orlando, welcome Orlando, Pristina, Wiener Neustadt. We have Warsaw, we have Linz, we have Bregenz. We have so many cities that really makes me sad. Let's give it one more minute. Milano, welcome Milano. Maybe I should next time try to welcome you all in your own languages. I need exercise for that, and maybe some insights on the list. Dornbirn, Prague, fantastic. It's Eisenstadt. What else? Neusiedl, Bruckneudorf, Schwechat, fantastic. All over the place, and we hope that you will also interact with us. As I said, we have a moderated slide or Q&A anytime for both of our panels, and I'd really like to invite you to send us the questions so that I can pass them on to our panel. Before we start with our first panel on the topic, is tokenization a game changer for financial industry? Very exciting topic and super speakers that we have. I'd like to ask our team to play the intro video for the first panel.
When we think of the blockchain, the first thing that comes to mind are cryptocurrencies, right? But there are actually many more use cases of the blockchain. One of the most discussed lately is tokenization. According to recent studies, the total tokenized market is estimated to reach 10% of the global GDP by 2030. Tokenization describes the process of transferring the ownership of an asset or a right onto the blockchain. By transforming assets into digital assets, we can make the exchange and transfer easier, faster, cheaper, and more transparent. Additionally, tokenization enables fractional ownership, which means we can slice the ownership of a large asset into tiny fractions. Tokens can be fungible or non-fungible. Fungible tokens are not unique and are interchangeable, unlike non-fungible tokens, which are unique and therefore non-interchangeable. While the future of NFTs is still being discussed, tokenization in general poses some interesting new opportunities. Take this piece of real estate, for example. It's a good investment. However, not everybody can afford it, which makes it a very illiquid asset. If the real estate company created smaller fractions by issuing tokens, many more smaller investors could participate. This would also make the asset more liquid. Additionally, these tokens can be used for automation of processes such as recurring payouts or compliance controls by programming such conditions in the smart contract. Lately, banks have also started to explore tokenization, mostly due to cost efficiencies. According to analyses, tokenization of financial instruments could save up to 60% of costs in the whole process. But it's not just banks and financial instruments. Pretty much everything can be tokenized. But only because something can be tokenized, it doesn't mean it makes sense to do so.
Hello?
What are the use cases where tokenization can bring added value? And what is the infrastructure needed for the new tokenized world?
Fantastic. Thank you very much for this video. Now we're moving on to our first panel. Is tokenization a game changer for financial industry? And I'd like to welcome both speakers in my studio and some remote. Some will join us in a second, and let me introduce this really, really fantastic panel. With us is Christian Plaza, the co-founder and managing director of Black Manta Capital. Your expertise is tokenization services. What exactly do you do in the blockchain field?
Well, we are a regulated financial services provider in Germany, licensed since 2019. And to put it as short and as simple as possible, we put assets on blockchain and distribute those as securities.
Fantastic. With us in studio is Thomas Pecha, sales director of Metaco, custody tech infrastructure provider. Thomas, welcome. What exactly do you guys do?
Hello. Thank you for being here. Metaco is a tech company. We are a solution provider, and we provide tier 1 banks in the majority with a custody solution to safekeep the digital assets.
Perfect. Remotely with us, Radko Albrecht, founder and CEO of Bitbond, a German company helping banks to issue tokens. Radko, welcome. What exactly do you guys do?
Hi, and thank you for having me. So at Bitbond, we provide tokenization software, tokenization infrastructure to banks, financial institutions, and other types of issuers of tokens. So we're not an issuer ourselves, but we provide the software tools and components that banks and other issuers need in order to create tokens, ERC20, NFTs, and other token standards, and also manage the lifecycle of these tokens after they have been issued.
Fantastic. Great to have you with us. And in a few minutes, Philipp Sandner will be joining us, head of Frankfurt's Cool Blockchain Center, one of the leaders of the discussions on crypto assets. He'll be joining us in a few minutes. I was going to ask Philipp, but maybe you guys can help me just to open up the topic. What is tokenization actually? We saw the video. How would you put it in your words? You guys are doing it all the time. What is tokenization?
Well, if I may, in most simple words, it's a packaging. It's a digital packaging for any kind of financial asset. In our case, through the packaging, it becomes a security, and that packaging yields certain advantages, transferability, tradability. But it's actually a very simple, tiny innovation in a highly functional and effective market. And that's also, if I may add one thing, that's also why we have the case that any kind of transformation transition onto basically the new technical paradigm is time intense, let's put it like that. So it takes a while until everybody merges to a new paradigm, and that's what we've been witnessing for the last 4 or 5 years.
Thomas, your definition of tokenization?
Transformation of an existing, let's say, vehicle, a certificate, onto a digital, fully digital end-to-end platform. And basically what you can do with the certificate, referring rights or goods, the same you can do with tokens. But it's the interesting part is that the tokens can contain smart contracts, and that in that contracts it's ruled and written who has which rights. That's the big difference.
But the question is, Radko, also to you. What's the benefit of it? Why do we do it? Is it just kind of, are we just experimenting around? Is it nice to have? Are we just trying out new technology? Or what are the real benefits? Why do we do it?
So I like to compare tokenization to the emergence of email and electronic forms of communications, a few decades ago. When people had to switch to using a computer instead of, sending a physical mail or doing a phone call, it might also have been hard to understand, what are the benefits, and you had an upfront tech investment to be made. And it's a bit similar today. For those who don't yet use tokenization, it might not be so easy to understand, but once you start to use it, you will see benefits in settlement times. They are much, much quicker. That allows you to reduce counterparty risk. You can fractionalize assets, which means that investors now get access to certain asset classes that they may not have had access to before. You can cut out a few intermediaries in some asset classes, such as the CSD, the Central Securities Depository, which allows you to save costs. And of course, not in every asset, all of these benefits apply to the same extent. So it depends a little bit what type of asset is being tokenized, and the motivation might be slightly different from asset to asset. But then also we have new types of assets that are being created. And yeah, maybe we can talk more about that throughout the panel.
We'll talk about that. Let me still try to understand it even better. What can tokenization do with blockchain technology that we cannot do without blockchain technology and tokenization?
Well, the first and most basic thing is we create digital identities. Something, it's been just talked about Web 2. When we exchange ourselves in the internet, we exchange information. I'll send you a picture on WhatsApp and we both have it. It's very simple. I'll send you a contract via email and we both have it. Now, when we are dealing with assets, we cannot do that. And that's the basic solution blockchain and then the first step cryptocurrency brought to the world. Now, this is hugely applicable in any kind of financial assets and beyond. But basically, when we are dealing with financial assets, that's everything in that regard. So the total potential market out there is beyond anything that you would see in any other field.
And how much of that market are we seeing engaged right now? Are we completely at the beginning? Do you have any estimate on that, Thomas?
As we mostly deal with the large banks, there are two big parties. The one start with cryptocurrencies, which is not the topic today, and then move to tokenization, and the other one do it the other way around. We have actually a customer who's starting now with the implementation project, and what they do is they manage heritages with tokens. They tokenize car collections. So it's in the private banking area, but it's in the beginning. I don't know how many, but I would say they make 3-4 tokenizations a month, and this is nothing if you compare it to the potential worldwide. I think we are on the very, very beginning that a lot of banks are testing, are trying, getting experience, how to treat it, how to integrate it in a core banking system, how do you value it, how do you bring the value of the token into the core banking system. But this is the big advantage, because then if you have solved that problem, and that's with that particular bank the case, the advantage is that the customer has all of his assets, including his car collection, including his Stradivari or whatever, on his Depotauszug, on his list, which he gets from the bank, where he sees what assets he has.
In the custody of the bank?
Yes, and that's the big advantage, because it's additional assets. Normally, he has a second certificate somewhere lying around, and the value also doesn't change. But if you have, for instance, a Ferrari and the exact model is sold 3 months later, the bank can adjust the value of the token, and then you would have in your core banking system the new value of this Ferrari, which is in your collection. And
Fantastic.
That's a nice idea, yeah.
Great. Philip, welcome. Philip Santner has joined us, head of Frankfurt School Blockchain Center, the leader of the discussion on crypto assets. Philip, very welcome. And I'm actually quite happy that you weren't here from the very beginning, because I asked all other 3 speakers on their definition on tokenization. Actually, I wanted to start with you, but it's good that we weren't influenced by your definition, so now you can have it on top. What do you understand under tokenization? Why do we do it? What's the benefit of it?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and thanks for asking it. I think, first of all, we have to specify the word tokenization and then tokenization of assets. That's something different, right? Tokenization means that you are reflecting anything out there. It can be, as we know it from the NFT space, digital art, it can be a ticket, it can be even a moment in time, everything you reflected in some kind of token. You're creating a digital twin, a digital representation of this thing on a blockchain system, and it does not have to be an asset. And a subset of this is basically tokenization of assets. That's quite much, in my personal opinion, related to the topic around digital securities. That means you are trying to take an asset out there which is existing, mostly a physical asset, and you, not always, but very often, and you try to map it on a blockchain system. You create a digital representation for it. And here we are very soon in the domain of digital securities, where you have then to basically comply with digital securities laws. Not always, but very often, of course. And why do we need blockchain for this? In my mind, it's very simple. First, the blockchain technology is running the register of ownership rights. This is done in the traditional financial domain by companies like Clearstream, but now this can be done by blockchain technology, and even more so, you are removing the requirement of an asset being documented on paper, so you're transforming this into the digital world. And then you, for example, don't need the notary anymore. There are examples for this. And what happens then is, suddenly you can transact security digitally. And in case you can do this, you can suddenly create a market for it, and you can create a liquid market for it. So things like liquid markets for smaller assets have not been existing so far. They can now be built with blockchain technology. And also an important point I would like to mention is basically that the capital market, as it functions now, can easily handle assets valued 100 million and above. That's all kinds of companies, IPOs. That's the stock market as we know it. Then you have the domain 100 million and below. And this is basically something where the capital market very often cannot be as efficient as it should be. And this is the space where I think tokenization of assets will kick in various forms. And with this, we can then tokenize single cars, single real estate objects, and so on and so forth, and then make them available individually in fractionalized forms to investors. And this is basically the reason why, in my mind, this exists, because with blockchain technology, we don't need the notary, the traditional share register anymore, and so on and so forth, to make this all handled digitally. Not always, but very often.
Thomas.
I'm absolutely with you, but the interesting part is that now with this tokenization, there's one new role, or a role which looks to be the most important one, because somebody has to guarantee that this token is this real asset, the old asset. So who is this guarantor saying or giving this guarantee that this token is really that picture over there or that car over there? And I think that's a role where banks should step in, because they are already trusted by the people, but they have competitors. But because I think the Big Four, for instance, could do this role also. So, I mean, they also trust it in a kind of way. But
have banks entered this market? Do they see this opportunity for themselves?
The one I mentioned before, yes, because they're doing exactly that. They are the guarantor that this token is representing that car collection.
It's interesting that maybe 2-3 years ago, some really real crypto guys told me that if bank offered them the custody, they would probably also put their crypto assets into the bank custody, even though not your key, not your wallet is one of the main sentences that they say.
But if it's okay for you, I'm not talking about the custody. Also, this is our field of expertise. But the point is, who is saying that this token is really representing your class of water there? And it doesn't say that the token is lying by that particular party. So, for instance, a bank in Austria could say, I'm guaranteeing that this token is representing that real estate, but my wallet is in another bank or in another country, wherever.
Okay.
I would make 2 points. I think there is no bank out there in the world, no reasonable bank, that is not dealing with the blockchain issue at the moment. I mean, we have the logo of our host behind us. So it is clear that if you're a regulated financial services institution, you have to deal with that. We've just had recently, we've met the German central bank on a conference in Singapore. And we said, oh, we are pretty happy with BaFin and German central bank. They have their big institutions, they have their specialists dealing with blockchain. And the lady from the German central bank said, listen, for me that's actually an issue, because I want every banking supervisor be knowledgeable on blockchain, because in 5 years from now, every bank will have to deal with that technology. And you ask about the adoption before, when you look at the figures, though, billions and billions of assets have already been tokenized. So that's one part of it. I'd say that's the easier part of it. When we look a little bit closer in terms of what has actually been placed on financial markets, then the number is significantly lower. And that's something where we and others try to do our work and promote adoption with investors and with the ecosystem as a whole.
And let me on this point put one question that I think would open up discussion on that, what you just said. We've been hearing about the term tokenization already for years now. What is the main reason that no concrete tokenization use cases have materialized yet from our audience? What do you think, all of you, whoever wants?
Well, I think
I can.
Philip, you first. I just talk.
Okay. Well, absolutely right. We have this topic out there since 2016. Now it's 2012, and not too much has happened, right? What happened so far? Lots of very, very solid experiments exploiting what's possible in the law, but at the same time, very often this has been driven by startups, and startups really did a good job here, but sometimes startups also lacked funds to develop this further into a scalable solution, to also create a secondary market with liquidity and so on and so forth. So to some degree, I think time has not come yet for fully scalable solutions. But the experiments and the projects which have been done have been extremely helpful to educate what's possible, to also educate the regulators, right? It has been very important. And I think now the time soon has come, maybe next year, that tokenization of assets starts finally working at scale, because we have new laws coming up. We have equity tokenization being possible. We have the possibility of getting prospectuses for tokens, and we have the possibility for creating secondary markets such that investors not just invest, but they can also get their money back. To be honest, who of you guys, including myself, would invest in an asset where it's not clearly possible how I get my money back? I would never invest in such an asset. I would always just invest in possibilities where there is some kind of liquidity in the market and some kind of guarantee that I get my money back. And that's the reason why, or that was the 4 reasons why tokenization so far only existed in prototypes and not in scalable solutions yet.
Radko, what's your take on that? You wanted to add something before.
Yes, I have to say, I don't fully agree with the statement that tokenization hasn't really found its use case yet. If you just look at the largest blockchains out there that are being used for tokenization today, which is Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, and Binance Smart Chain, there's around about 4 million tokens that already exist. This includes ERC20, ICO tokens, NFTs, and of course, only a small subset of these tokens are issued by banks and by regulated financial institutions. But there is already a big market out there already, that is trading NFTs. And NFTs also are not just digital art, but there are several use cases for NFTs. There's ICO tokens, platform tokens. And yes, not all ICOs were successful, clearly, but some of them actually were very successful and opened up a new form of a capital market for companies that previously had no access to outside funding. And of course, this is a development that is now spreading towards the more regulated and traditional financial services world. So, and in this part, the use cases are smaller yet than, in this, I would say, less regulated world. At the same time, though, here we also see some really good developments. There's more and more banks that are utilizing tokenization to, for example, save a lot of costs by bypassing the CSDs, Clearstream and Euroclear. And there are some really, really big use cases out there. It takes longer to roll out because obviously banks naturally, take longer to go to technological transformation projects. We're talking about larger budgets that need to be approved, and we're simply talking about larger timeframes. But clearly the development is there already today, and I think we have already left the pilot and POC stage also in the regulated world. But that part of the world still has to catch up, with some of the developments that happened in the less regulated world since 2016, 2017.
So let's focus a bit on the tokenization of financial instruments. Philip, what do you see on the market? Which trends do you see, and what use cases are already being built?
Well, to some degree, it's dependent on what the government allows us to do. In Germany, we have the EWPG Gesetz, which is now allowing us to put specific types of instruments on blockchain systems. In German, let's call it Schuldverschreibungen. That's typically used, but not always, in debt instruments with a bond nature, but it could also be used in certificates on the stock market, right? This is what's possible now. on the roadmap of the regulator, at least in Germany, we also see now stock markets which should become tokenized. Maybe it would be allowed next year or the year after, who knows? But things like smaller legal structures, like a GmbH, is basically not even on the agenda yet. So this will take time. Then we have other countries, for example, in Switzerland, you can tokenize anything, including shares of share companies, Aktiengesellschaft. And the same is true, for example, in Liechtenstein. We now see that, for example, in Liechtenstein, you can create equity on a blockchain in types of a share and get a security prospectus on it and then disseminate it in the European Union, because Liechtenstein has a very special construct with the EU. This allows equity tokenization in the forms of shares imported through Liechtenstein, right? This can be very, very, very interesting because it opens up the space going away from debt instruments towards equity instruments fully regulated. So we see like a myriad of possibilities, which is opening up in the next couple of years. And we also have other movements in countries like Luxembourg and so on, who are also investigating how to change their law. But we have to have the governments moving ahead, allowing us to things to do. And here, I think, for example, speaking for Germany, it's okay, it's good, but the equity tokenization is still not possible, and we have to really push this topic as soon as possible. By the way, MiCA, which will come to us 2025, is not helping here in any way, because MiCA is not applicable to securities, just to crypto assets, right? So it's a long way to go. And therefore, I would also add exactly to what Radko has been saying. We have like thousands of tokens on all these chains, but we just have very few tokenization of traditional assets. Let's call it digital securities. Therefore, tokenization works extremely well especially when you deal with not regulated things like images and all kinds of things. But once you're trying to map it with the traditional financial market, then it gets complicated. And then a couple of things are possible and more things will be possible, but also a couple of things are also not yet possible.
You guys are all working with banks in different settings. What's your impression? Is it the regulation which is in a way, or are they still skeptical about the technology itself?
I think there are several causes. The first one is that different building blocks are needed to make the complete ecosystem environment working, and I believe that they are here, but 2 years ago or 3 years ago, some of them were in a very early stage. Secondly, the same as Philip said, we're talking about a global thing, and then every second country has a different law. So
fragmented regulation even in the European Union.
Yeah, even right, and this doesn't make it easier. And the whole topic, not only tokenization, but all the cryptos, started with startups and not with the banks. And now we as Metaco see as big names, really huge names like Citi, like HSBC, like SocGen, now in the last couple of months decided to do something in that space because they became our customer, makes a big game changer. And there will be 2 huge banks in Germany following this year, and Turkey will follow. So we see an increasing demand from the banks to be part of the game. And now all are jumping on that train with different approaches. Some of them start with the cryptocurrencies and not the tokenization. But all the big, large banks now are investing in that area. And I think this is necessary because the most important part, beside the tokenization and the guarantor, is the safekeeping of the digital assets. And we have seen what happened to crypto exchanges the last couple of days and weeks, and how billions of dollars have been destroyed. And that's the place where the banks can step in. Maybe
just one question, because you mentioned the infrastructure has not been there yet 2 years ago, and now it is. What infrastructure is needed in order to be able to conduct this business? Just briefly.
Briefly, one of the 2 guys here, we have a case with Bitbond, where and that's the interesting part, because it makes all life so much easier. The bank will use Radko's solution to to issue the token, and then they will use our solution to safekeep the tokens and to mint them. And the interesting part for me was I'm old school IT banking and stuff like that. That there is the connection is the blockchain, and so his system runs somewhere and our systems run somewhere, but the blockchain connects the two pieces, and it works out. And then of course you have to have the interface to the core banking system and stuff like that.
Yeah. But the industry is there. If somebody wants to do...
Yeah, I think now it is there.
Yeah, maybe to pour a little bit of water into the wine, I think the main issue for the banks are the core banking systems. So it takes years to innovate that and to transfer that. Yeah. And even if a bank would basically interface with one of the players, then there are huge questions of integration and so forth. And to combine that with the earlier topic, I'd say the following, and it's probably not popular that it comes from a blockchain tokenization entrepreneur. Financial markets are highly functional and effective. So we have all kinds of scandals, but this thing is highly complicated and it works. And it's really difficult to innovate that and to shift basically the whole system on a new, on a completely new technology. That's the major challenge. And when I look back over the 5 years we've been doing that, so what we have now, and interesting to add one thing, just to put that in, traditional financial markets are decentral. There's a little bit the discussion between blockchain and traditional. Okay, we are decentral and those bad traditional, also the traditional markets is decentral. It has different functions. Now, what we see in our business, the different functionalities similar to the traditional markets are built. There are tech platforms, there are primary market players like us, there are the first exchanges and secondary market players, there is custody and so forth. And investors, family offices, institutionals adopt to that technology. So over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, the ecosystem in its roles and functions has built up. And by the way, I think we will see a lot more. So I don't expect the banks to fill everything in. We see a lot more in new. But now for the next 5 to 10 years, that ecosystem has to come to life. And in the Web 2 comparison, I think we are probably somewhere before 1994 when Amazon was founded. But we will see those players coming up, and then it's a marathon.
What do you say is still needed in the ecosystem? Typically, we would also say you need legal advice, you need tax advice, you need courts that need to understand it, public authorities that need to understand it. What is the status of development, of maturity of the ecosystem?
Just to repeat that, we are somewhat in Web3 terms before 1994. I mean, I completely concur with Philip in regards to we need more legislation, we need more adoption and everything. I think we are in a good way that we have somewhat everything there. Also, of course, we don't have a land registry on blockchain. We don't have the company registry on blockchains, but we'll get there. All the sub-ecosystems will move there step by step. It's a marathon, and it takes patience. But there are very few to none, be it private or public players, that would say, no, that's not going to happen. No, I don't believe in it. No matter how skeptic they are towards Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, in terms of blockchain adoption in the financial markets, there is no serious person who doubts that.
Just one question, maybe whoever, Philip, maybe you can answer it. When talking about blockchain, we've been using the term a lot, which ones concretely are you talking about? So when we refer to blockchain, which one are we talking about?
Well, typically I would refer to Ethereum to get started. You know, that's the largest community out there. And then there are various Ethereum derivatives or Ethereum-inspired blockchains, you know, Polygon, other things who run on the same background technology, EVM. And that's basically where you see most dynamics, typically, because that's where you kind of find easily developers and existing smart contract templates, you know, which you can also copy paste, where you find consulting companies and so on and so forth. That would be my best guess. But I would also include Binance Smart Chain here, even though it's a little bit more centralized, but multiple ones, right?
Anything to add? Okay, then I'll move to next question. Where do you see tokenization gaining traction first? Which assets, maybe also within the financial sector? Who wants?
Oh, happy to answer that. I think in regards to what's happening now and what has the highest potential is in the first step, crypto as an underlying. So somebody, an institutional investor, and we have representatives here who are dealing with that, is basically wants to invest in crypto, but needs it in a more kind of traditional package than in a fund structure, whatever, and that structure is tokenized. That's definitely one point to look at. A second thing, and we've been trying to do something there, but haven't had that project yet. That's carbon offset. That's a huge area where we do not have hereditary systems and where tokenization can be very, very useful. And then classical bond financing. I think we'll see a lot there, be it in the SME sector and elsewhere.
Ratko, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so one aspect that from what we've been seeing in the market always plays a big role is that financial institutions get started with asset classes where they have the highest efficiency gains, or to put it very bluntly, the highest cost savings, because that's where you can find business cases that amortize the upfront investment that it takes normally within 1 year, sometimes even less. And then many banks would start out in such an asset class. And then once they have established the base infrastructure for custody and tokenization, then they expand into other asset classes that might have smaller, cost efficiencies. But once the infrastructure is in place and the marginal cost to transfer, settlement to other asset classes into a tokenized way, then all of a sudden becomes viable. And this, at least in our experience, has been the case with those asset classes that have a fairly high issuance volume, high issuance frequency. This would be retail structured products, this would be fund shares in many cases, or all kinds of investment products that have an established investor base within the bank.
Do you also see a bit of the way I understood Thomas, the kind of involvement of the banks is growing exponentially? If big banks currently have been joining in, do you see that trend as well?
Yes, definitely. Unfortunately, we don't yet see it in actual volume issued, because as I said earlier, some banks take, and naturally need 1, 2, sometimes even 3 years to go through a transformation that allows them to issue these more established asset classes in a tokenized form. But regarding the demand and the amount of projects that we see in the market, I think in about 1 or 2 years from now, we will see an exponential growth in the actual issued volume of tokenized financial instruments.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that, Thomas.
Yeah, what I just wanted to mention is that I think in the end, the banks will generate the volumes through their huge customer base.
Yeah.
But I think there's a high chance that startups will be the first movers in inspiring for new ideas where to use it. I want to bring that one example. In Austria, there's an e-car sharing. I don't name it, but there's an e-car sharing, and you could participate in their model by
tokenized
Teslas. Okay, this is allowed, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I think this is really great. Yeah, and I mean they made a prospectus with everything what you mentioned also, Philip. So it's bypassing the banks. Yeah, I mean. Obviously, they don't want to hear it, but I think it's an example how you could do things differently. And I believe that, as I said, the banks will now step in and they will take over this role again, because the trustiness is the big issue.
This is fantastic. Help me understand the competitive environment. So you said the Big Four could take a role of kind of certifying that the asset that I put on the blockchain really belongs to me. That could be in competition with banks. Then you have startups, you have fintechs.
Yeah.
Who do banks compete with? And do they compete with them, or do they collaborate with all these players? Where do you see the future, in the competition or collaboration?
I think the big advantage of the banks is that if they offer custody, the safekeeping there on their original, business, yeah, Sparbuch, yeah, savings account, all that thing, we trust the banks. Yeah. And I think out of that position, they can take over all other positions, even if they lose it at the beginning because they didn't jumpstart as, for instance, the Big Four. But
everybody agrees on that?
I would say
yes, so mostly yes, but I would highlight two things. First off, I would agree with Radko that mostly those tokenization projects where retail investors are involved, they appear to develop faster and much faster than other ones. Then second, now moving away from the tokenization of assets domain, right? Moving towards tokenization. Once you are tokenizing things which are not relevant from a regulatory perspective, like the images in the digital art domain and so on, then you also see skyrocketing tokenization things. The same applies to ticketing things, all the NFT domain and so on. That's tokenization, yes, but partly not without regulation being relevant here. So that's basically where the real dynamic seems to play. And then I would also mention and argument that the CO2, the carbon tokenization space, will be huge. It's unfolding right now at an enormous speed because there you don't have legacy infrastructure in place. That's very, very fascinating because in the carbon space, you don't have existing exchanges and banks and asset managers who are protecting their existing infrastructure. You don't have to convince people because there is nobody. So those people in the carbon tokenization space, they can build things on a green field and on a blank sheet of paper. And this could really speed things up dramatically, right? Regulation is there with MiCA largely, and therefore this carbon space needs to be highlighted. This can be huge next year.
Speed up the decarbonization in general, you mean?
No, it's basically the so-called voluntary market, basically where I, as a company, I would like to offset my pollution, and then I'm connected to a farmer in Brazil, who then again has to be audited and so on, such that in the blockchain there is no fraudulent tokens, and the blockchain infrastructure is combining me as somebody offsetting CO2 as an industrial corporation with the farmer in Brazil, for example, who is absorbing CO2 from the air. Yeah, the blockchain as a settlement infrastructure. Mm-hmm. In my mind, this can be very, very, very interesting in the next 1 to 3 years.
Thomas? Agree.
Agree fully, yeah.
Another question. Why should I tokenize a property to have a digital certificate of the ownership if we have a mortgage register? So I think it's a good, it helps us explain why is it necessary if we have systems that function as well. Like you mentioned before, financial system works. Why do we need tokenization?
So two things. We've done real estate tokenization, and we've put the first cross-border retail real estate token out there between Germany and Austria, regulated by BaFin and FMA. It was a 2 million offering in Berlin with a WIB. So it can be done. We can use participation rights. We don't have to go back to the land registry. As a company, we see huge interest from the real estate sector, be it developers, funds, REITs, and so forth. I personally believe it will be the last asset where we see the absolute full potential of the technology. Because real estate really operates in a larger ecosystem beyond the financial system. So we have the land registry, we have then, if it's a corporate project, we need a company registry on the blockchain, and ideally at some point we want to have our national IDs there. Now, if that all comes together, we can nicely execute something on a smart contract, a transaction that's normally we would go to the notary and so forth. So that might have all these sub-ecosystems together that will most likely take 5 to 10 years. But once we have that, then on top of that, we will build completely new secondary instruments and create completely new asset classes on the secondary towards that primary market. And that's where a huge story takes off.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add? Okay, next question. The current interest is very low because the solution offers too little value added in relation to the switching costs. What would be needed to accelerate this? Should I repeat? Philip, Go ahead.
I'm going to try it. I think you have to not just focus on increasing process efficiencies on the background. You have to create new products with a benefit for the customer. And in my mind, please tell me if you are different here. I'm very happy to hear your opinions, but I feel tokenization of real assets like real estate, traditional cars, all kinds of real assets, with a liquid market can really change things, because in case you have purchased a real estate object as a private person in Germany, it's horrible. I have never seen such an endlessly inefficient process, with the notary and this and that and thousands of forms and letters. It's horrible. So those people who might want to invest in real estate, they can only do so in Germany when they have at least 200,000 on their bank account. And then it's horribly inefficient, right? So imagine now a person who might want to invest 50,000 or 10,000, he can't, or in case even like the guy who has the potential to invest 200,000, it's so inefficient that he can get the money in, but not easily out again. So even this person would have a benefit from investing in real estate and also getting his money out on a liquid market. So I think so tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the largest benefits is by creating new products of this type, where people can invest in real assets with a low amount of money, build real assets which are inflation resistant, by the way, and can get their money in and out at any point in time. But this requires also to have understandable financial markets there, like shares and other things, such that the investor really knows where he's investing in.
Well, to add to that, I think it needs pioneers and it needs people with passion for innovation. I think it's a good, rational attitude towards the market to wait until everybody is there. So for certain players, it makes sense to say, okay, we don't need to take care of that yet. Our core business works. We don't need to answer that question yet. And they have a point. But when I look, for example, at private banks in Germany, there are like 5 or 6 players that take care of the securities market. On the other hand, I'm looking towards 20, 30, 40 young startups taking care of custody, first of cryptocurrencies, later then of digital securities. That will be the future competition. So it's simply, in terms of all the players involved, it's simply, okay, when do you want to take the cost to adopt? Because at some point you have to be there, and definitely the first players in the market, they might pay an extra premium for adoption now, but they are differently positioned a couple of years from now.
Absolutely. I have to underline that. I think at the moment, maybe it's not a profitable business if the banks start with it, but they are light years ahead of the ones who don't do anything in that area, because it's not only about the different parts or parties in that ecosystem. It's also about the experience, about the people in the bank. They have to be, solid with that topic. And I think, I don't know who it was. I think Philip also the auditors, the same thing. Yeah, they all have the learning curve, and the ones who start early will have a big advantage. Maybe I'm allowed to bring a small example from Turkey. In Turkey, there is an exchange which was actually, as far as I know, the 4th exchange on a global scale, and they make huge amounts of turnovers per day, and no bank did anything for 5 years or 6 years, but it was the 4th crypto exchange on the market. Yeah? Unbelievable, and now everybody is jumping in, because. And then once again, what we heard before, legislation is forming, the environment which is necessary that the banks can jump in.
Do you see any negative effects of the current negative news around exchanges in the market? Do banks react with caution or no?
No.
I think the opposite, because that's the argument for the banks to say, I offer custody for you, don't leave your wallet, or you even don't have a wallet on an exchange, you have somewhere a booking entrant, you don't have your personal wallet. So banks are offering this and see this now as an additional
opportunity.
Push. It's a push, yeah.
One question, how does the bank ensure, from our audience, how does the bank ensure that you don't crash or sell your Ferrari or Stradivari, as you mentioned at the beginning, that the bank has in custody for you?
Well, so in the big difference between tokenized securities and cryptocurrencies is that we have a centralized element to it. So it's in the interest of the issuer of the token that they know who the investors into the assets are. Yeah. And on the other hand, basically in contrast to what we see with cryptocurrencies, it's also in the interest of the investor that the issuer knows who owns what. Because at some point, the investor wants a dividend and wants a participation and wants his say in the asset. So we have a centralized element and we have decentral functions in terms of custody and so forth. And that's a completely different level of protection of the ownership rights compared to what we see with cryptocurrencies, because then it's a pure issue of custody and where it lies.
Thomas.
Yeah, I think we have to differentiate between tokenization and tokenization. The example I brought, or with the Ferrari, for instance, there is the tokenization used to have it on the lists of assets as well. So nobody is investing in that Ferrari. It's just a kind of a certificate that it's there, standardized. But if you talk about tokenization of art, for instance, that a museum, and I had already talks with some art collections, that they would issue tokens on their collections with, let's say, special rights. Ticketing system, Philip, what you also said, if you invest in that token, you can enter once a year for free, and if you buy 100, you can make a party with your colleagues in the entrance, for instance. That's a complete different story. But then the museum is the guarantor that this token really reflects part of the collection.
We have just few more minutes and so many questions are coming in. So I'd like to use one question for us all together to recap this panel. Because we're asked to do so. Can we recap the role of a bank, commercial bank in tokenization? Is custody service the only role of commercial bank? Philip, maybe to summarize, and then I'll invite you all to sum up this together.
Yeah, good question. Well, I think custody will be a key topic out there. Advisory, as always. Money creation / loan generation, loan handling, and so on. There are tons of business models who are staying like this. The custody topic will be much larger than we would expect, because in the future there might be custody not just of Bitcoin and other things, but custody of my car access, or custody of this and custody of that. All kinds of variables will be on blockchain basis. So therefore it will be custody of all kinds of things being operated by a bank. So custody itself could be a huge business. I don't think that custody will become a commodity. I think custody will be huge and spreading to all kinds of assets. And another purpose is for which a bank will be rewarded is that due to KYC controls and anti-money laundering, I think banks fulfill a very important role in the system, awarded by the government with licenses to do so. Of course, they have to care the costs for this, but somebody has to do it, right? And therefore, I think it's not a business model, KYC stuff, but still it's a role for a bank, because somebody has to basically help the system to prevent money laundering.
Radko, where do you see the role of banks in this ecosystem in the future?
So first of all, if issuers want to issue tokenized assets, and this could be securities such as bond, fund shares, etc., but also NFTs, in many cases they would expect their bank to act as a full service provider. So not just to do the placement of the bond issue, but also to do the settlement. So they would not just operate the custody, but also the tokenization infrastructure. So that's one very important role. Then one other topic that we could talk easily about for 10 minutes or so, that I just want to mention briefly, is stablecoins. This hasn't really come up yet. That's also a tokenization use case. Right now, the stablecoins that have a large adoption have not been issued by banks. I think there's a big market opportunity for banks to issue stablecoins, because once you have an on-chain payment method, you can automate payments. And banks naturally also act as paying agents in many situations, and they could automate a lot of these processes and also reduce their costs and introduce even new use cases around that. And I think this part, operating tokenization infrastructure on behalf of its clients and organizing an automated way to settle payments. Those are two big areas next to custody where banks have a very big role to play.
Fantastic final words, and I connect one question in addition. We saw at the beginning when fintech started arising, the predictions were they will take over the banks. The collaboration was the outcome. Is that something that we're going to see in the crypto, in the tokenization field as well? Collaboration with startups, with innovation, with pioneers?
Well, we absolutely believe in cooperation, and we have no issue to look towards competition because basically every competitor that would show up would drive adoption. And in regards to the banks, I would say the core asset of the bank is the customer relationship. And for that customer relationship, the bank needs new product. And for the last decade or a couple decades, we've been seeing that it's been more and more difficult for banks to provide that product. And tokenization firms can deliver new product that can then at some stage be distributed with banks. And by the way, when you look at something very traditional like the latest Porsche IPO, for example, that's also happening in a cooperative way. That's not run by one single institution, one single bank.
Thomas, briefly.
Yeah, I think the answer is easy. Look at the participants here. Yeah. We, beside Philip, we all startups.
Yeah.
And we all cooperate with banks because banks are our customers. So I think the cooperation model is the one which will drive the future.
This was super interesting, dear gentlemen. Thank you for taking time. Thank you for joining us remotely. Thank you for coming to our studio, and thank you for all your insights. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you also to our audience for all these questions. I wasn't able to take all of them, but maybe we will look at some then, so to say, after this event. We'll move on to our keynote, but before we do, we have another video for Christian Gebert on how RBI looks at their tokenization from a senior management perspective. Let's see the video.
When we talk about tokenization in the banking industry, then we definitely talk about a potential game changer. And if you think about our capital markets services, including our custody and fund administration services, then there definitely is a potential for tokenization. But first things first. First, we need to automate our processes. We need to push standardization in the market. And we also need to update our legacy systems because our asset services industry is characterized by a lot of legacy systems and a high integration into the whole banking environment. So therefore, before we talk about tokenization, we must do our homework. As well, we need to build up an ecosystem which is aligned within a complete regulatory framework within the European Union, but also outside of the European Union. So therefore, there will still be a time where both areas will coexist, the tokenized world as well as the legacy world. Therefore, we in RBI, as we want to deliver the full end-to-end value chain to our clients, we are focusing on a bridge between the legacy world as well as the tokenized world. Therefore, we are working in different use cases on such a bridge where we build up APIs for our legacy systems to implement diverse assets in a tokenized way. So therefore, we are really looking forward to this blockchain night to explore more and more adventures in this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian, and welcome back to our next talk. We'll do a short recap. It was a panel full of content, so I'd like to ask you to help me recap it a little bit, and then you'll give me a sneak peek into RBI tokenization and custody project. With me, Harald Kreutzmeier, Senior Advisor, RBI. Welcome, Harald.
Thank you.
And Gernot Bretenthaler, RBI Blockchain Hub at RBI. Welcome, Gernot.
Hi, Dejan.
Hi. Short recap of the previous panel. What are your takeaways? I, for example, wasn't aware that the banks are already so engaged in topic of tokenization. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, first of all, it's great to be here again with you, Dejan. Third time. It's a beloved tradition already to make the RBI Blockchain Night together with Bootkasten. We have 190 participants in the first panel, so great. Stay tuned. We have way more content to come. And I'm also very happy and satisfied with the first panel. Yeah? We put together a very diverse panel, on purpose, of course, because we want to show the different perspectives which are in this market, and it's a very broad topic. But I'm also happy because it's now observing the markets in 3 years And also having a look at all these discussions, also there is an evolution in the discussions.
Yeah.
Because 3 years ago, we were all the time discussing about public blockchain versus permission blockchain. What are the advantages, disadvantages? Then the next round of discussions was, we are missing regulation. We can't do this, and we are not allowed to. Today, we were slightly touching a little bit the blockchain topic. We were all of the panelists agreed that there is regulation about to come. It's maybe not 100% clear to everything single detail, but we are confident that we can build products. So we are discussing on why we are not picking up. What is the role of a bank? Why is the ecosystem not reacting faster? What are the problems of startups? What are the expectations towards banks? So a completely different discussion. We are discussing about where is the value added for the customer. And I think this is the point where we'll see that things are picking up. And this is the exponential curve. I think we are close to the first tipping point where we're going up. And it's our role in the Blockchain Hub to prepare RBI Group so that we are not missing this train and to get things going.
It's perfect summary, actually, because I had the pleasure to moderate the previous events as well. And I was mind blown, just as you say, by the maturity of the discussion. We're a completely different level, completely different stage of the discussion. What do you take away from this panel?
Yeah, I would totally agree to what you guys were saying. The tone of the discussion has changed dramatically. I mean, it's not will it work, will it not work? Is it competition versus cooperation and things like that? When will we have the regulation in place? Is the technology working or not? So we're beyond that. So it's not an if and when anymore. It's more when will blockchain take over? That's the one thing. And the other thing is we're now discussing tokens, yes, but the tokens proliferate into every aspect of our lives. And they will continue to do so. It will also lower the thresholds of investments. It will exponentially increase the universe of investable assets. So there's a whole lot of new things coming into our space. It's not, I mean, ideally we would, and I love this, one panelist said that carbon credits, they start from a blank sheet, no legacy infrastructure. Ideally, we could throw away our legacy infrastructure and start with the new infrastructure. But, you know, at least in one perspective, that would be ideal. In others, maybe not so much. But it would greatly help to improve the system and to improve the infrastructure, to improve the ecosystem and all that.
You know, while preparing for this event, I was thinking, well, how will this negative news from the exchange world in the crypto system influence the event? And I find it excellent how Thomas said, well, positively, this is now exactly is the time to talk about the technology, to talk about the real use cases, and to bring banks into position to take the role.
It's a cleansing event.
Yeah.
I would define it. I mean, things like that happen. They shouldn't happen, that's for sure. And they could have been avoided. But in the end, it confirms the value of a trusted infrastructure, a trusted, regulated system. And yes, it has its disadvantages, but mostly advantages.
Let's talk a little bit about your RBI tokenization and custody project. Give us a sneak peek as far as you're allowed to and want to talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, we are basically dealing with tokenization and custody since years now. 3 years ago, we have started off with Billon on a permission blockchain. It was not possible to do something on a public blockchain back then.
Help us remember, what was it about?
It was about the RBI stablecoin, and we basically did back then 2 use cases. One was the cross-border transaction use case, where we basically sent stablecoins from one country to the other within RBI Group, and the other one was the RBI fund token, where basically we gave some test customers an app, and they can peer-to-peer trade then tokens amongst themselves, also using a stablecoin to achieve delivery versus payment setups. So this was our starting point. And then we also had a custody sandbox, and Harry was really very much engaged back then, coming from the custody side and looking into it, and really flattered about all the possibilities, which are obviously here in terms of tokenization. And now it took us 1 year to shape out and wrap up our heads to find also the right partners. There are a lot of quality partners out there in the market. We have selected now Metaco, Bitbond, and VaultID. VaultID is not represented in the first panel, but VaultID is an Austrian-based wallet provider. So we are teaming up with them. Also, an interesting reference now already to this cooperation versus competition.
Yeah.
I see competition. We need those people. We need those their skill set, and we will run experiments on assets and really try to combine the new infrastructure with the legacy infrastructure and test out what can be good use cases for our customers.
If I may chip in, we found that the combination, the marriage of legacy infrastructure and the new world works. So also that box is ticked.
Wow.
Yes, it comes with a little bit of a challenge here and there, but in principle it works. So that's the beauty of it.
What issue are you addressing with this project? What problem are you solving?
Many, I'd say, but one is cost, for sure. It's our ambition to bring costs down and to lower the threshold for investing. That will open up many more clients. Remember, in Austria, but also in other countries, there's a single-digit percentage of the population that owns securities. Single-digit, so percentage. That is nothing in reality. We can double that, triple that, quadruple that if we bring down costs and we lower the threshold for investments. Second, we can securitize, tokenize different asset classes. So not only will we bring more clients to benefit from investment products, but also we multiply the number of investments, the asset classes, but also within each asset class, the number of investable instruments.
Democratize sort of investment?
Well, I don't like that term, but I know it's used. Democratization is always with a sort of a little bit of a tainted term. But yes, you can, in the future, you can invest with 20 euros, 30 euros easily at a cost of cents, not euros.
In assets that you would never be able to invest before.
Precisely, precisely. Yeah.
Fantastic. We ran out of time. Thank you for all those insights. I think you really have a competitive advantage because you started early, you're playing, like the panelist said, with this technology and developing real use cases for your customers and clients.
Remember, regulation will come. And someone has said in 2025, but that is around the corner.
That's around the corner.
This is not 2 years away and awfully long time. It's around the corner.
Fantastic. Also, our second panel is around the corner. But before we jump into it, we'll have a very, very short break. We'll be back in 3-4 minutes. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a second.
Good afternoon to everyone, also from my side. I'm delighted to welcome you at the Blockchain Night, the annual event of blockchain team at RBI. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend this very interesting meeting, but I'm glad I have been given the opportunity to say a few opening words. We're living in a fast-paced world full of new, unprecedented events. The only real constant is change, as the saying goes. Banks are no different in this respect. Customers' needs are changing and the expectations are getting higher and higher. In order to serve our customers as best as we can, we have to be open for these changes, and some new technologies can help us with that. Blockchain technology has been one of the biggest technology disruptors in the last couple of years, bringing unprecedented innovation in financial domain. While most of the use cases are still limited to crypto space, we can see that the application of the technology is starting to come closer to many industries, including banking. Cryptocurrencies, metaverse, or NFTs are becoming much more popular, reaching early adopters from mass segment, not only digital matured population. We in Tatra Bank are long-term committed to be an innovation leader and valuable part of overall RBI innovation ecosystem. We also fully understood that if we want to participate in the new trends, we have to first learn, and the best way of learning is by doing. One example of recent activities is Tatra Banka's spot in the metaverse Decentraland, where recently a fully virtual concert promoted by our fully virtual influencer Baby Blue was hosted. This is just one of the examples how we are adapting to the new reality. It may not be certain how the reality will look like, but we know that we want to be prepared for it. And then events like this help us build the culture we need to have on the road for readiness. With these words, I'm handing over to the experts that will shed more light on the topic of NFTs and how banks can support the ecosystem.
It was in March of 2021 when a businessman decided to spend $69.3 million on this, a non-fungible token of digital work of art, a collage of 5,000 digital images called Every Days, the first 5,000 days. From there, the market continued to rise with apes, penguins, and birds until it eventually crashed. Now that the hype is over, one question remains. Are NFTs a technological innovation that brings added value, or was this just a speculative bubble? In its nature, a non-fungible token represents the unique ownership of one specific digital or physical asset on the blockchain. Even though the popularity of NFTs started because of some funny JPEGs, it continued with other use cases in areas like digital art, music, physical art, event tickets, and many more. The possibility to prove that there is only one owner of one unique asset opened new possibilities and business models. In the entertainment industry, NFTs are used to reward artists' most loyal fans by giving them an NFT and distributing different goodies to the NFT holders in the future. Collectors that now collect physical things such as postage stamps can now also collect them in a digital form. Another example are supply chain applications. Using NFTs to verify ownership and origin of a product or part makes the whole supply chain more transparent and goods more traceable. But the question remains, what will be the future and main use cases for NFTs? And what is the role of banks in supporting this ecosystem?
So welcome back to our second panel on NFTs, speculative hype or genuine revolution. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, have gained significant popularity in the last 2 years, with the word NFT being proclaimed even as the word of the year 2021 by Collins Dictionary. Is it just playing hype without added value, or do they really have, or do we have real use cases in this field? Welcome to our panel. We have really distinguished guests with us here, and I'm really grateful that you all took time to explain us more about this topic. Darian Linikus is with us from Lisbon, CEO and co-founder of Tokapi NFT platform. What do you guys exactly do in this field?
We have a platform that allows you to collect NFTs without any code. So it's a custodial centralized platform, and it makes NFTs accessible to everybody, brands, artists, and collectors.
Since when are you active in this NFT field?
Me personally, since 2019, and the company started last year and is live since this year, July.
Okay, perfect. Then we have Vincent Streitl, Senior Researcher at ABC Research Institute. Vincent, welcome. And what do you guys do?
Well, we are an FFG-funded research institute that focuses on blockchain technology, how the technology works, how companies can actually use it to create value for their customers. And as I said, research focused. So we not only do the applications, but also like the research behind that.
Fantastic. Michael Schramm, Head of Digital and Emerging Tech Austria at EY, and also co-founder of Ownership.com, newly founder, so to say, in this field. Welcome, and what do you guys do both at EY and at your new startup?
Well, at EY, we are supporting companies in getting started with blockchain, with NFTs, and leveraging and using them for corporates typically for classical things like marketing, supply chain tracking, things like that, both from a technology perspective as well as from a legal perspective and a tax perspective. And at Ownership.com, we are connecting physical things with the world of NFT and blockchain, and we allow precious, valuable things to have a check of authenticity, a check of ownership, and a tradability of those things on digital marketplaces, although they are physical.
Fantastic. Great to have you here in studio, and remotely with us, Akash Jain, COO Digital Assets and Currencies Transformation Team at Deutsche Bank. Akash, very welcome and thank you for taking time. What is your scope and field of activities at Deutsche Bank?
So I'm the CEO of the Digital Assets and Currencies Transformation Team. As part of this team, we are driving the Deutsche Bank's agenda in terms of strategy, plan and execution of the various use cases in the digital assets and currency space. Our mandate covers the different businesses of corporate bank and investment bank.
Fantastic. Who wants to explain what are NFTs? Maybe do we start with you, Vincent? What are NFTs? How are they different from tangible tokens? Why are they fungible tokens? Why are they non-fungible tokens?
No, if you conceptualize a token as a container that resides on a blockchain, you can fill this container with rights or bundle of rights. And if the bundle of rights refers to a unique good or to something unique, then we talk about a non-fungible token. So what's fungibility? Fungibility is if you can exchange a unit within a class or category without changing your position. If you have a 10-euro bill, I have a 10-euro bill, we exchange it, we are basically in the same position. Now, if non-fungible good is not interchangeable, think about an apartment. Even if we have two apartments, A and B, even if it's in the same building of the same size, it does make a difference if we exchange them. So that's a non-fungible token. It's a token that refers to something unique.
Why is that relevant? What kind of new use cases or possibilities does this fact open, Daniel?
It allows you, it brings ownership to the digital world. Mm-hmm. So you can suddenly own something that was not ownable before. May it be like the most prominent use case or what started off the hype in NFTs was art, digital art. People create art online for years, but there was never really a way to sell it or to own it or to collect it and to trade it. And NFTs made that possible. And the use cases are, manifold. A lot of things are possible now. And obviously there are also use cases in the physical world or in the world of fidgetals, which connect physical and digital objects. But for me, the full potential unfolds in the virtual realm, the metaverse, whatever you want to call it. And you can own stuff there now, truly.
That you couldn't really own before. We were talking about tokenization in the first panel, and NFTs are just one aspect of tokenization. We have tokenization, and then we can tokenize fungible and non-fungible tokens. Is that correct?
Yes, of course. So tokens can be used in a different way. And as you said, the difference between fungible and non-fungible. NFTs are representing something specific. And I consider NFTs typically as a digital twin of something. Yeah? This can be something in the real world, but this can also be something digital like a picture, a graphical art, but this can also be something, maybe a right to do something or a right that you have, an ownership right, an access right, a usage right, things like that. And this makes the use cases a bit different on an NFT perspective, because this is mine, and I can prove it by having an NFT in my wallet. If I have a typical token like a coin or something in my wallet, maybe I can prove that I own 2% of something, 10% of something, but it can be any 10%. And that's a bit the difference. In the panel before, you talked about tokenization also of real estates and things like that. And typically in those cases, it's something that we call fractioned ownership, where I say you want to use token to own a percentage or a piece of something. But the NFT is something which is a digital twin. So it is really representing one very specific thing, because you want to trade a specific thing, or you want to leverage a specific thing, and therefore it's important to have this unique thing.
Now, Daniel was talking about first use cases in the art space, but UI consults businesses. What relevance does this topic have for businesses? Would you have real life use cases that you can offer to your clients?
Well, businesses, what a real business, but let's say business in the sense of corporates, traditional companies, are seeing NFTs as a potential for having innovative marketing things. So they typically use NFTs or consider NFTs at the moment not as something where the value of the NFT is in the center of thoughts. It's not about creating something which gains value more and more and is traded. So they use it as a marketing instrument, as a collectible for customer engagement, for example. So they want to strengthen their brand, they want the customers to interact, they want to have additional community features. And this is one thing where many corporates are thinking of NFTs in a totally different way, how to use this technology.
Will this evolve, the usage of the NFTs?
Yes, I think so. But it will be slow. And I think so because this NFT, and we see when we look at NFTs today compared to NFTs 3 years ago, there are less and less NFTs which have a pure just a picture or some kind of art. NFTs are more and more connected with a utility, with some aspect in the real world. So NFTs are used as to enter something, as a kind of ticket, to access something. Maybe it's the NFT is from a museum, a collectible, but it also used as a ticket to enter. Or they are from the Austrian football team. They issued some NFTs, and with a combination of NFTs, you have a meet and greet with your football star, things like that. So more and more NFTs are connected with utilities. And I think the next step will be that also physical objects are connected with this NFT world in order to be traded more. And this is, I think, where NFTs will also evolve, because, and this is the big criticism about NFTs in the past, often you buy an NFT and you do not exactly know what you really own. Maybe it's the digital right for something, but sometimes it's a hype thing, it's something which is cool at the moment, but it's not a long-term sustainable value. And therefore, I think the consumers, they are looking for understanding more what is behind the NFT and what do they really own. And that will change by connecting NFTs with real stuff, let's call it like this.
Akash, what's your take on that, actually? We were listening to tokenization debate and the relevance for the financial sector. Is it the same in the NFT sector, or is this still very premature for banks?
Yeah, so building from the fellow panelist who was speaking, so fully agreed, the starting point of NFTs was arts, collectibles, gaming assets, but now we see more and more move towards utility ideas, right? And the vast range of utility ideas which can be applied using NFTs. So it's from retail, fashion, real estate, supply chain, IP rights, patents, music, medical records, and so on. I think I'd say that we are still at a very early stage of the NFT becoming mainstream and revolutionizing the industry. From a banking perspective, I specifically see 3 opportunities across the landscape. I think the first thing I would link it to the metaverse opportunity. In one of the recent papers that Deutsche Bank published, we estimated that the e-commerce value from blockchain to be $2 trillion by 2030. And I think NFT will act as a fundamental unit that drives the metaverse economy. And banks have to play a key role in building solutions that enable buying and selling of these NFTs in the metaverse ecosystems, whether it's with the payment business or the cash management business, and I think banks have to play a key role there. I think the second opportunity is around digital identity and verified credentials and self-sovereign identities, right? Institutionalization of decentralized finance will require scalable permissioning and credential management, and NFT enable this digital identity and verified credentials to actually become a real solution. And I think that's again, banks being the provider of trust can play a key role there. And I think the third thing, which again my fellow panelists mentioned, is the whole phygital NFT, right? Which is physical and digital combined together, not just the digital NFT. And you could do the digital NFT which can be burned, and the physical asset can therefore be issued. And this links to the metaverse and has a number of use cases around retail and luxury good firms. So I think, in a nutshell, I think we are still at very initial stages of this whole NFT revolution, but I think it has significant potential, and those are some of the areas where I think banks could play a role.
Michael, is this third use case what you're addressing with ownership.com?
Exactly, yeah. So having, and thank you for the vocabulary of phygital. Yeah. It's hard to pronounce something, but the combination of physical and digital is exactly the right word, because you have certain possibilities with physical things, obviously, and you have certain possibilities with digital things. And if we take the best of both worlds and can combine it, this is the idea and the philosophy of ownership, yeah, to enable these kind of use cases. And maybe I want to add something, because we are in a banking surroundings a bit today. I think another future use case of NFTs, and we see very early pilots at the moment, is that NFTs can also act as a collateral in the banking thing. For if I take a loan, for example, and I want to have NFT as a collateral, as a security that can be put in and act as a security for the bank to give me a loan. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So there are very first pilots on that, and that's a very interesting idea in sense of, well, but what's the real value of the NFT? Mm-hmm. Because when I give my house or my car or something as a collateral, then it's quite, well, it's not more easy, but it's a bit more predictable from the value. But with NFTs, maybe not the NFTs which are connected to a Bored Ape, but maybe NFTs which are connected to a phygital thing, or NFTs that have a bit more sustaining value. And this is, I think, also for the banking industry a very big possibility for the future.
What kind of NFTs do you have on your platform? What are the use cases that you have there?
At the moment, nothing that can be considered a security. So no interest-bearing, stakeable NFTs or anything like that, but everything from art to, mainly at the moment, art and collectibles, but we are category agnostic.
Okay.
And
is the to be very provocative, is the hype over, or do you still see traction? What's the status?
The hype is not over, but obviously it's down bad, like trading volume, prices, but I think that's not only because of crypto and NFTs. I think that's because of the global economic situation. It's not like that only NFTs are down. You can look at the Netflix stock or stock performance over the last year. You can take a look at online shop performance of several businesses. I think crypto and NFTs perform relatively okay compared to everything else. Trading volume is down bad. A lot of people lost money, but to be honest, it's just how crypto and NFTs are still at the current stage. And
early technology.
People come to gamble. most of the time you lose. That's just the way it is. Unfortunately, early adopters, people that are patient, make money. The people that come when their Uber-fahrer tells them to buy punks or apes are most likely the ones that lose. But for me, the hype is not over. I'm super bullish. New brands coming in every week almost. Today, Nike launched their own NFT platform, which they call it digital creations. Reddit launched their own collection. Starbucks is starting a loyalty program on Polygon. So brand-wise, adoption is at an all-time high, in my opinion. Retail money inflow is down 90% from last year.
Okay. But the technology is something that will prevail, that, as I can see already from the first things that you said, has absolute relevance and use cases. What is the state of research on NFTs? You're doing a lot of research on it as well. What's your perspective?
Obviously, it's currently a lot of market observation, and categorizing what markets we have, what exchange forms you see there, what features become dominant, because things become possible with NFTs that wouldn't be possible with other tokens. For example, if you have a piece of art, you tokenize it, and it's sold for €1,000, let's say. You could create an NFT that automatically pays a royalty fee to the artist, even after it's sold again and again and again. So these are one avenue of research. A second big avenue of research, and I think you also touched on it, is the value you create by the use case of NFTs. Because so far it has been a lot about collectibles, which is clearly an art market thing, and you can create value with that, status, for example. But there are a lot of use cases discussed where you can create additional value, be that in the corporate world, where you can have a proof of authenticity, which add tremendous value to resale values, for example, or to create completely new use cases, for example, in the metaverse. Just as an example, Hublot, the watchmaker, recently created a metaverse football stadium. So I'm really curious what they are up to with that, but I guess it will be huge.
Since we've been talking about metaverse a couple of times, there's one question from our audience. How important is the future of Meta, one of the providers of metaverse, for the companies seeking commercial success in the NFT area? Yes, go ahead, Akash, and then...
Sure.
So I would say, obviously Meta as a large company has a significant role to play. However, they are not the only company which is actively in the metaverse space, right? There are lots of other firms that are heavily investing in researching and finding new innovative ideas for metaverse. Other thing to note is it's not just Meta's metaverse. There are multiple metaverse that exist today. And I think what we think is in the future, in the target state, or in years to come, it's not going to be that one metaverse will prevail and everything else will just go away. I think you'll see a world where multi-metaverse experiences do exist, with some interoperability across those metaverses. So while clearly, if one of the biggest firms that has invested takes a step back or has a significant number of layoffs, that will clearly impact in the short term, but I don't think that will fundamentally impact the innovation that metaverse will see in the years to come.
Daniel?
First of all, everybody here in this room has a different, basically, interpretation of metaverse. So it's always funny, everybody talks about it, but everybody has a different opinion on it. So it's always the question, Twitter is also a metaverse because I chat with randoms that I know better than my neighbor. So potentially it's also a metaverse already, but very two-dimensional. So it's hard to tell, but what's the fact is Meta invests, I think, more than all other metaverse companies combined into metaverse. So saying they will not play a significant role would be, ignoring the facts. They will go like down. They really want to focus on, I think, virtual reality and augmented reality. They bought Oculus Rift long time ago. They are also investing in companies like Control Labs, where you basically already you have like a small wristband and then you can control stuff with your mind. So in my opinion, they are going into the real metaverse direction. In Web3, we have startups with 10 people that are building pixel worlds and call it the metaverse, which in my opinion we had this already. Like we have Sims or Second Life. So just because it's now with a little bit of NFTs does not make it more metaverse than games that are 15 years old. So I'm a little bit, the metaverse discussion is very sensitive in my opinion, but in my Meta will play a significant role, I think.
But at the same time, you're saying that Meta is not the precondition for success of NFTs either.
I don't think they have ever said that NFTs will play a critical role in their metaverse.
Michael.
Or did they? I don't think so.
I also don't think so today. So let's start with, I see metaverse as a 3D version of social media, because it is a 3D world where you can do everything that you do on social media. You meet people, you talk to people, you visit events, you do shopping, you see commercials and things like that. So the NFTs have some role today in metaverse in sense of the first shops that exist today in metaverse, they are selling NFTs. But I think the NFTs are not a core prerequisite for metaverse. But I think in the future they will be interconnected, because when we think of NFTs as kind of tokenization of many things, and that we believe that people are more and more buying NFTs, trading NFTs, and dealing with very normal things of their life using NFTs. And in parallel, I think that people will more and more leverage metaverse to go in and do their social media stuff there. So they will meet together. And necessarily when I buy something in metaverse, then NFT is a good technology that enables me to buy stuff, either if it's digital or if it's phygital.
Akash, is the payment in the metaverse, we touched this topic a little bit in the previous panel, but is that an opportunity for banks in the metaverse as well?
Yeah, so today the experience of buying an NFT is not something that an average user on the street can easily apply, right? It still requires a level of understanding that many users for mass market adoption still struggle with. And I think that, so therefore there is a huge role for banks to play in how payments can be applied and how easily can users own, buy, sell NFTs in the future. And I think that's where the banks can provide a solution in such a way that it's a seamless experience. It's integrated, and I think that today does not quite exist to the extent to make that experience fully seamless and user experience that anybody who doesn't fully realize or understand this technology can still work with. I think that does not quite exist yet today.
We have another interesting question. What is your take on NFTs which are linked to real-time data like weather, climate, real estate valuation, and so on? Any opinions on that?
I think this is going to be a huge market. If you think about how much sensors are incorporated in a normal car currently, and if you think how much more that's going to be, there's a huge commercial value there. And NFT as a technology could be, or NFTs could be part of a technology solution that commercializes this value. Because I think in that regard, the big open question is, if you own a car and drive it, who does the data belong to? Is it you, or is it the car company? Or is it maybe the highway company? So we need solutions there in the future, and NFTs can play an important part in that, I think.
Michael?
I think that's a very interesting potential, because since 10, 20 years, every company is claiming, we have so much data, let's monetize it. How can we monetize data that we own? And I think NFT is a tool that facilitates that, because NFTs is an option and a technology which makes sense, especially when you want to trade something, digitally. And if you have data, not for every data that's true, but if you have data that is valuable and that where trading makes sense, so there I think NFTs for data is a super interesting option. But to be honest, I've not yet seen an example of that, but this is a super interesting potential for the future, I guess.
Daniel.
I have to add one thing that maybe is shocking to some people, but nothing from NFTs is on the blockchain. So everything is stored on external servers. Like the metadata, what you're referring to is with dynamic metadata, because every NFT has a link. On that, the only thing that is on the blockchain is a link that refers to metadata stored on an external server. Hopefully it's on IPFS or on some decentralized file storage. Some NFTs still store on their own server, some store on AWS, so you do not really own the data there. So I think with the current NFT token standard, ERC 721, owning data is not a good use case, because the data is obviously the data is anyways not on the chain. It's always stored anywhere, like in a different location on a server somewhere, and it's a big discussion in the NFT space about metadata storage and stuff like that. But it's a very technical topic, because most people don't know that. Everybody thinks I own it because it's on the blockchain, but not the image is on the blockchain, not the name of the NFT, nothing.
Just a link.
Just a link that directs you to the metadata, and platforms like OpenSea read the metadata. It's a JSON file, and then they show you on the front end what they read from the link. So it's a little bit, not a lot of collectors want to know that, but that's the truth at the moment.
Vincent and Akash.
Yeah, maybe Daniel is completely right. And I mean, you do have decentralized storage layers, that's possible. But for the data example, if you think more in a corporate setting, if you have, let's say, a hospital where you have like the building operator, then you have the machines which are operated by a different company. And this is all proprietary data, so this is stored on each company's servers and kept as a secret. But NFTs could enable you to create a data market that, let's say, the operator of the CT machine can share and commercialize selected data with other interested parties.
Do you see new marketplaces arising in this field?
We see relevant players actively thinking about new marketplaces.
Okay. Akash wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think it's very important to be careful conceptually here. I fully agree with the panelists. So ownership of an NFT does not equate to having intellectual property rights on that asset. What I mean by that is when you own the Jack Dorsey's tweet or the first tweet, that does not entitle the user who used the tweet to print on his or her T-shirt, right? That right is still owned by Twitter and Jack Dorsey. So it's the same as when you buy a book, doesn't mean that you have the copyright to create a movie out of it. And I think that's a critical concept that many people don't grasp, that I think it's quite important to understand.
What about the topic of regulation? Are we advanced here, or is there still to do? The previous panel mentioned that the regulation prevents, for example, regulated businesses like banks to experiment some use cases. How is that in the NFT space? Do we have solid regulation? Do we have legal certainty?
I can only give a startup opinion, and we as a platform don't need any license. And what I, as a non-legal expert, say, I think regulating NFTs is a little bit complicated because NFTs can be everything, and it will be hard to regulate NFTs in general because this NFT could be a reference to Rolex. This NFT is art. This NFT is an in-game item from a shooter. So I don't want to be the regulator that finds a regulation that fits NFTs as a whole. That's just my 2 cents. But right now, I think there's not much regulation because it's not a financial asset. But you guys know more.
Well, I agree. Like the most regulation we currently see is in the financial services industry. And I totally agree with Daniel. It depends on what the NFT stands for, what you do with the NFT, whether or not you're regulated. And normally, Western regulators take the approach, same business, same rules. So if you operate in a certain area, it would be safe to assume that the same rules apply to you as to other businesses.
Michael, when you have your corporate clients approaching you, do you tell them then, yeah, it's safe to try it out, it's safe to play with it, or do they have some second thoughts on that? Do they ask you, are we allowed to do it at all?
Well, that's a major question at the beginning, yeah? Are we allowed and how are we allowed to do this? But I agree, so this is not, this has nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with the use case and the segment you're in, yeah? When you own a knife, you can slice a tomato, which is fine and not regulated, but if you use it to kill a person, then this is something against the regulation, but it's still the same knife. So NFT is a technology, is a tool, and when you use it in the banking industry for certain financial services, then it's strictly regulated, and in other it's not. So having NFTs as loyalty program and as a marketing thing, so that's easy. But as soon as you come in the area of this thing can be used as a payment thing, or has some rights which goes in the direction of securities, and this is also possible for NFTs, not only for other tokens, then you are regulated. So, but to answer the question, I don't think that it's not yet enough regulated, or the NFT itself, but it's about the use case and the segment you are in. Yeah.
Let's have a look in the last 5 minutes on the future use cases, where the industry is going to go, what new options are going to arise for the financial sector, for the corporates, for startups, and for all of us customers at the end of the day. Where do you see the future, Daniel?
I think the future is very bright and like a lot of different use cases, but me personally, I'm mostly looking forward at the moment to NFTs in gaming, because gaming esports has been growing crazy. You have like Twitch streamers that turn on and have 40,000 viewers, more that will ever go to Austria versus Rapid, for example, and it's just one guy. And I think, as I said, NFTs give ownership in the digital world, and once you are able to own the assets you use on a daily basis, I know it might sound strange, but some people, you know, play games for hours a day and they have sentimental value. They want to own it. They want to trade it. I think in gaming, especially this will be a mass adoption driver of NFTs when big game studios adopt them and understand the values that come with it. So that's for me one of the most prominent use cases in the digital world.
And how would you explain the value of the use case in the gaming industry? What value is it delivering?
You own it.
Yeah.
And now you pay, for example, people that spend money on Fortnite skins, like 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, or people that buy FIFA packs for thousands of dollars, they own nothing. FIFA they can ban their account, they bring out a new game, everything they paid for is useless. You can't own it. And for me, the main value of blockchain in general is the possibility of self-custody. So if I know you have a bank, you trust them, but still, now you don't have the chance to take it out. And with crypto and blockchain, you have the possibility of self-custody, and that is for me the most important value, and that also goes for digital items. So if I want, it's mine, and nobody can take it from me. And I think even for gamers, that is very valuable. And you can also have you can sell it, so you can in theory get some of the money you invested in back. You can rent it. You know, if you go on holiday, you can rent it to friends. It becomes an asset, sort of. Yeah, it becomes an asset, it becomes movable, ownable, and with all that, a lot of value, in my opinion.
Before we continue our foresight, so to say, Michael, one question for you. Is ownership utilizing chain-link technology like dynamic NFTs?
Not yet, but it depends a bit on the use case, and we are addressing both different kind of customer segments, like artists with very specific and low volume transactions, as well as the fashion industries and fashion brands. And the way how we then implement the NFTs is it can be customized to the use case. Yeah?
Okay.
But today not.
Back to the future. What are the future use cases of NFTs, Vincent?
I think gaming and other metaverse-like applications are a huge field because, as Daniel said, you can own your digital assets in these simulations, let's put it that way, and you can transfer them out of it. Gaming, obviously, if you want to change or take your Sword of Lightning level 5 with you, you can do that now. Huge retail case. But also for more corporate or industry near simulation environments. If we go back to the building use case, let's say you want to simulate how your hospital works, and everybody can bring their intellectual property into a joint simulation space without necessarily needing to divulge too much their IP, and that would help tremendously in the planning process, for example. Once again, NFTs can be an important component of such a solution.
Supply chain?
Supply chain is another big use case. I think what you're working on is also part of the future because it adds tremendous value for the user. And I think that's the core thing to look for in use cases.
Michael, how big part of the future is what you're doing now?
Hopefully a lot, hopefully a very big part. No, but for the future, I see two major things coming. First is the mass adoption of NFTs, because NFTs today is not usable for the mass. Yeah? So I compare it to crypto coins like Bitcoin. So 6 years ago, if you wanted to trade Bitcoins, you needed to know what private public keys are, you needed a hoodie, and then you were safe. But today, every person can trade and buy and sell Bitcoins.
Even in their banking apps.
Even in the banking apps. And this mass adoption that we saw with coins, I expect in the next years in the NFT space, because today's NFTs are not super usable for standard users. This is the first thing I see. And the second thing is, where I'm working a lot on, is to combine this physical world with the digital world. And I give you one example where this makes business value. So when brands or artists create something like a luxury handbag, a Rolex watch, or a super painting, they are selling it for a first price. And when there is a second market for that, and for these kind of things, there is a huge second market, when it maybe keeps and grows in value and grows in price, the manufacturer, the artist, there is no value for them. And using technologies like NFTs, using concepts like royalties, which are on NFT marketplaces, you can give those manufacturers, those artists, a contribution of the value add and of the growing value of the creations that they did. And I think this is one of many examples where this potential and possibilities of NFTs can add to our real-world objects.
Fantastic. Akash, the banks, the future of banks, which use cases are gonna, not the future of banks in the NFT space, obviously, which use cases are gonna gain the traction at first in the future? What do you think?
So I pick just one slightly less exciting area, which is the whole thing around digital identity. Right? I think NFTs can play a significant role in allowing KYC, AML considerations to actually work on the blockchain, right? So concept of soul-bound token being applied based on NFT concepts can allow permissioning to actually happen in a public blockchain. And I think that enables a lot of, scalability around things like decentralized finance and institutionalization of decentralized finance. So what I think is, NFTs for us as a bank, we would be an enabler for making many of the other use cases possible by solving some of the challenges around digital identity and verification.
Do you see the banking sector kind of as a whole already addressing this topic, or are RBI and Deutsche Bank, for example, the pioneers in the banking sector dealing with this topic?
We have a few pilots that have already started to happen in this area, and I think that will continue. I think it's as I said, it's too early at this stage to make it mass market and to fully adopt it. I think we'll see over the next 1 or 2 years many of these experiments and pilots to continue. many of the institutions are building internal capabilities or ensuring that their second line risk and control functions feel comfortable and confident about it. And that is a journey in itself. And I think till that is fully accomplished, I don't think as an institution we would, see, commercial value directly being driven through the bank.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. This was super interesting again for me. A lot of new learnings that I take away from these panels. Thank you very much for taking time for us. Thank you also, Akash, for you joining us from Germany. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to be moving on to our final kind of act of the day. I will have two speakers from the RBI joining me as well and giving you some further insights on their project, maybe wrapping up the first panel again. The second panel, it was a lot of content. First, we started with tokenization, the relevance of tokenization for the financial sectors. Then we had a chat with the RBI project, so to say, and now we will close with Christian Wolf, Head of Strategic Partnerships and Ecosystem, Raiffeisenbank International, and Wirt Hribar, RBI Blockchain Hub at RBI, and both are with me in studio already. Welcome, guys.
Hi, thank you, Dan.
Perfect transition, perfect event. I just told somebody in the break, this is my learning event of the year when it comes to blockchain, when it comes to real use cases, and I completely agree with what your colleague said already. The maturity of the discussion and the level of the discussion is mind-blowing. It's skyrocketed as if we had 10 years in between, but it was only 1 year since the last blockchain night. What are your takeaways?
Well, actually, if I may, we take great pride to be not only the moderator, but an active shaper of the discussion. I think it comes not natural for big incumbent banks like us to discuss these very technology-driven topics in such a diverse and also partly neutral way. What do I mean by neutral way? I hope that also today's event could give you the impression that we do not only look at that at the most positive way possible, but also that we take a critical view on that. And I think weighing both standpoints really helps us to get a quite realistic picture on how this technology can help us, the industry, and ultimately also our clients and consumers.
Wirt, what's your recap of today's panels?
So I really like the whole discussion. It reminded me of the saying that we tend to overestimate new technologies or the impact of new technologies in the short run and underestimate in the long run. So I think exactly this happened with NFTs. We had a hype, we had a, let's call it a bubble. The market crashed, and now we're in some kind of consolidation phase where we actually see the use cases, new use cases with real value appearing. So I think that this is a perfect example also that proves this saying. And we're also trying to figure out what is our role in this system.
The market crashed, but the technology remained and will remain.
Exactly.
Speaking about your role in this system, Christian, what is the relevance for the RBI in particular? Why do you look at these topics? Why do you do projects in these fields?
I think we all know that we are living in an increasingly digital world, and a lot of customer behavior is meanwhile driven by technological progress and advancement. But on the other hand, if we look at what are the real disruptive technologies, those do not only incrementally improve what we are doing, then there is actually quite a few. But blockchain is definitely one of them. And we have come to the conclusion by all of these discussions, by looking very closely at the technology itself, but also the business model impact it generates on banking, on the industry in general, that there might be use cases that come and go, but the technology will stay.
Were you guys aware of the fact that many banks seem to be joining you pioneers in the field of tokenization, in the field of NFT? It was a new perspective for me.
I mean, we're also observing the market, not just when it comes to NFTs, but also when it comes to the general topic of tokenization. We, at the end of the day, don't care whether these are fungible or non-fungible tokens. What's important for us is really the infrastructure and what are the services that we can provide also in the future. And I think that here, but this is my personal opinion, that the role of banks will also be big, especially when it comes to this trust that the banks can provide. So banks do have the trust of their customers, and this is a good, let's say, basis on which we can build different kind of services. We've heard also Akash saying custody, payments, e-commerce. Yeah, but I think that the basis of everything is really the trust.
And will this trust bring you in the pole position also when competing in the blockchain space, so to say?
I wouldn't say pole position, because trust needs to be earned. It's not something that's just there. But I think we have a good starting point, especially as incumbent banks, as we have a long history of building up trust with our customers. So also in the rather traditional worlds, they could be sure that funds are safe with us, that they have access to the funds, and that in general, whatever we claim to be, that we actually deliver. And I think this gives us a good starting position, but I also believe that our position in this new world of blockchain is yet to be defined, even though we have a very good and a clear understanding of what the starting position can be.
As a blockchain hub at RBI, from the very beginning, and I had the opportunity to moderate already the first event, I remember you always said we're building up an ecosystem, we're collaborating. Is this still one of your primary strategies?
Yes. It's not by coincidence that also our area of responsibility is called strategic partnerships and ecosystems. And I think also the panels that we had today are representative of that idea. So we are strong believers that the things that we are doing here are not a solitary approach, but rather a joint effort of relevant ecosystem players in delivering something. Also, by purpose, we invite all these ecosystem players to, together with us, discuss these options and these opportunities that arise. Ultimately, we strongly believe that the cooperation also here is what helps us to quickly provide services to the market.
Maybe to look a little bit, just to finish the discussion, over the plate, so to say, and the applicability of other ecosystem and use cases. We were talking in the first panel about tokenizing carbon certificates, I think it was mentioned. And I had the opportunity to moderate an ESG event that you organized a few days ago. Are these ecosystems, blockchain and ESG, also growing together? Is blockchain going to have use cases in the ESG space as well?
Definitely, and I think, thank you that you mentioned that. If you take one step back, like in a museum, to look at the whole picture, also my team and RBI in general has been working on several, might seem decoupled areas of focus. We have discussed open banking. We have discussed now blockchain. We have an ongoing discussion about IoT, sensorics, robotics, etc. And one of the panelists already said, or there was a question even from the audience when it comes on how do you integrate external partners or external data to blockchain-based solutions. Then actually all these puzzle pieces come together. You need, for instance, open APIs to connect to the legacy world. You need IoT, sensorics, etc., to generate the data that we use elsewhere, right? And again, all these approaches have one thing in common. They are all based on joint effort of ecosystem players.
And that's what you're building. Thank you so much. Any announcements to make for the future of your activities, or are we ready to wrap it up?
We're ready to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Yeah, and I hope that we see each other next year.
And great job, RBI team. Thank you for creating and enabling these events to connect within people. More than 400 people applied for it. I think we had 200 people watching the panels at the peak times. Fantastic achievement, connecting the dots. That's what you do. Thank you for joining us. I think it was extremely very, very good event for me. Like I said, the learning event in fields of blockchain, focused 2 hours of new things, and the maturity of the discussion is mind-blowing. I enjoyed it very much. I hope you too. I hope you have your learnings. By that, thank you for being with us, and goodbye.